Some Christians claim that because they get their morality from an unchanging, eternal God, their morality is therefore objective. And because sinful atheists get our morality from mere personal preference and nothing more, our morality is therefore subjective. It's grounded in our personal preferences and therefore inferior to Christian morality. I'm the out-of-body atheist, and there are some holes in this Christian idea that fortunately not all Christians believe. So today we're going to poke those holes as thoroughly and enthusiastically as YouTube's terms of service will allow. Blah. Back in the long, long ago days, before social media took over the internet, there were these things called internet forums. And Gen X used to gather in large numbers on these internet forums and have something called a discussion. Now, what a discussion is it's kind of like the stuff on TikTok where you're going like this, and like this, and like this, and like this, and some words appear and there's music playing. It's kind of like that, except you're doing it at someone and they're doing it back at you. And there's this weird thing called paragraphs and complete ideas that happen in the discussion. And I'm sure it's all very strange now. So I was a member of an internet forum. It was Richard Dawkins' internet forum back before we all realized that Richard Dawkins is a bigoted old piece of shit. And it was an awesome forum full of awesome people that I could have lots of these discussions with. And a lot of our discussions were about things like religion and atheism and morality. And I got in a big argument with a guy. I believed that morality was objective for everybody, that we could objectively determine what is a good moral and what is a bad moral. And I was having that belief as an atheist. And this other guy believed that morality was merely subjective. Eventually, I came around to understanding that a moral framework is always subjective. He was right and I was wrong. And back in the pre-social media days, sometimes people realized they were wrong. It was unhinged compared to now. Morality itself is not objective, but we can objectively assess whether a moral act brings about the moral outcome that is intended. So you can have objectivity in morality, but you can't have objective morality. Now, to back that up, let's just actually look at what words mean, because in order to have a conversation, words have to mean something. So I've written some definitions down. Now, I am a descriptivist, not a prescriptivist when it comes to words. So I will accept that the dictionary tells us about how words are used, not how words should be used. But it is necessary to agree to definitions in order to have one of those discussions that happened back before social media. So, from the Oxford Languages Dictionary, morality is defined as principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong or good and bad behavior. There's nothing in there about objectivity or subjectivity, so we have to look further. That same dictionary defines objective as not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. And subjective means based on or influenced by a person's tastes, feelings, or opinions. So what this all does is it sets us up for assessing whether the claim that Christian morality is objective is true. Right off the bat, there's a problem, and that problem is God. So in order for morality to be objective, it can't be what God wants. If God is deciding what's moral, it's still subjective. It's just someone else's subjective position. It's not my moral subjectivity, it's God's moral subjectivity. In order to be objective, it would have to be true whether or not God agreed with it, or whether or not God preferred it. Because nobody can prefer it if it's objective, it's just true. God's morality would be just as subjective as my morality. It just lasts a lot longer. Or does it? So I've written down some questions to guide our discussion here because, ooh, itchy nose. It's just going to be, well, if you've seen any of my videos, you know I meander. I'm like a river in human form. And we got to put some dampers on that if we're going to get through this in a reasonable amount of time. If Christian morality is objective, why don't Christians agree about what's moral? If Christian morality is not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts, why is there disagreement among Christians, and even among Christians within the same faith group, about what is moral? Our expectation of objective morality is that everybody who has it will agree on it. If not everybody agrees on it, then clearly preferences are coming into play, because how else are they going to disagree about it? They're all reading the same Bible. And that takes us to our next point, actually. How can Christian morality be objective when it's reliant on personal interpretation of the Bible? If you get any two people who've read the Bible, so I'm excluded, I've forgotten almost all of it, but if you put them in a room together, if their interpretation of the Bible is objective, they should agree about everything. And probably they do not. The Bible has historically been used to form opposite opinions. So that means that people read the book and reach opposite conclusions regarding slavery, genocide, non-consensual marital relations, or grape, whether or not to kill under various circumstances. Killing is kind of a big deal. Whether to allow abortions, because the Bible is actually equivocal about the issue of abortion. You're just picking and choosing which passages you want to hang your personal preset conclusion on, if you're using the Bible to decide abortions should be a thing or abortions should not. Whether it's okay to drink alcohol. So the Bible was the basis for prohibition, and the Bible is also the basis for Catholic Mass. Whether divorce should be allowed. There are passages in the Bible that lay out when divorce should happen, but there are also people who read the Bible and conclude you should never get divorced. Whether or not to work on the Sabbath. There are passages in the Bible that clearly say anyone working on the Sabbath should be put to death, and other passages in the Bible that say, yeah, it's cool to work on the Sabbath, guys got to eat, right? There are a whole lot more of these dichotomies. In fact, you can take any moral issue and go to the Bible and find a passage that supports your conclusion. Not the conclusion, your conclusion. The Bible is a Rorschach test, and you're just interpreting that ink butterfly. If God's morality is eternal, why do Christians selectively obey the rules in the Old and New Testaments? For example, the most cited anti-gay passage in the Bible is in the Old Testament, but many other rules in the Old Testament are selectively ignored. I think it's Leviticus where it says, if a man lies with another man as he lays with a woman, he should be put to death. Leviticus also forbids eating shellfish, forbids wearing mixed fabrics, forbids all sorts of other stuff that most Christians will agree it's cool to do now. So why are we going back to Leviticus? And I know you can find passages in the New Testament that can be interpreted as anti-gay as well. Why are so many people going back to Leviticus, though, and then ignoring the rest of Leviticus? And you can do that for every book in the Old Testament. There's some shit in there that people are adamant that you cannot ignore. It's fundamental, like, oh, I don't know, the 10 Commandments. But there's other shit in there that you're like, oh no, you don't have to do that anymore. And there is no clearly defined mechanism by which we as individuals can derive objective morality from those passages, because there's no way to figure out which of these are literal, which of these are figurative, which of these still apply, which of these don't still apply. And there's argument all over the place about which is the case for which passage in the Old Testament or even the New Testament. With all of that shit going on, you're kind of in a quandary if you're going to claim you've got objective morality, because your morality cannot be objective if it's so open to interpretation based on how you interpret the Bible. If God is unchanging, how come he's a complete dick in the Old Testament and only mostly a dick in the New Testament? So I did read the Bible at one time, and I started, of course, with Genesis, as one does. It is, after all, the beginning. And in the beginning, God's kind of a dick. And God kind of doesn't know some stuff that you'd expect God to know. And God has a lot of regrets, which one would not expect of somebody if everything's going according to plan. And God is all het up about punishing people. And the only way that you get forgiven is if you make a sacrifice. And then comes the New Testament, and God's still a dick, and he's still super into sacrifice, but he's like, tell you what, we're going to kill my kid for 3 days, and then I can be a little bit more chill. And then all the Christians are like, oh, Jesus died for me for 3 days. That's such a big sacrifice. There is nobody else in all of the world who has lost 3 days of conscious experience in their body. Hello, I've got thousands of coma patients who'd like to talk to you about your sacrifice, Jesus. If Christian morality is superior, why are Christians overrepresented in prison inmate populations, while atheists are underrepresented? The United States is, of course, the highest prison population of any country in the world per capita. We put more people in prison than anybody else. Go us. So we have a certain percentage of people walking around who identify as some sort of Christian who are not in prison. And then we have a percentage of people who are in prison that is much higher and identifies as Christian. Meanwhile, I think we're up to about 10% atheist identifying people and another 20% of non-affiliated people, so nuns. And that often gets converted into 30% overall non-religious. But if you look at the prison population, less than 1% of the prison population identifies as atheist, and significantly less than 20% of the prison population identifies as none. So this representation is not because our laws are atheistic, because Christians also are overrepresented in the political bodies that make and interpret our laws. The majority of judges are Christian. The majority of Congress critters are Christian. The majority of state legislators are Christian. So these are laws made by Christians that Christians seem to be having a harder time following than non-Christians, would be the conclusion we reach straight from numbers. I don't believe that, actually. I think there is another thing at play, and that thing is that parole boards are also predominantly Christian, and many prisoners are identifying as Christian in order to be viewed more favorably by parole boards, which, if you think about it, is an even bigger, nastier, filthier, grosser problem for our justice system to be having, because it seems to be that people think, even though there are more Christians running through our justice system, that being Christian will get you out of it better. God clearly changes his mind. There are passages in the Bible where he regrets doing things. There are passages like creating humanity. In the bit with the flood, God's like, oh man, that was a terrible choice. erase, erase, erase. Not the action of an all-knowing being, and not the action of somebody who made the correct moral choice the first time. If you're making moral choices, you're probably not thinking, oh, better delete that. If God can change his mind about what is allowed and what is not allowed, that's not objective morality, nor is it eternal, because at some point it changed. Eternal doesn't change. That's what it means, since we're going back to what words mean. And I think it turns out that a lot of the problems that we have understanding these Christians who have this idea that morality is objective if it comes from God is that a lot of them didn't go to the schools where you learn how to words good. They're not terribly bright, which could also account for their higher representation in prisons, because educated people are also underrepresented in prison. Just a fact. Ultimately, though, my biggest issue with deciding that Christian morality is superior is that it creates this framework in which we can view everyone who's not Christian as morally inferior. And we see that a lot among the dominionists that are taking over our government. Evangelicals are even more disproportionately represented in our government than Christians generally. And evangelicals often subscribe to dominionist ideas that we should become a Christian nation, and that anything they do to make us a Christian nation is ultimately acceptable because the means are justified by the end. The end justifies the means. It's easy to get that reversed, but they both mean the same thing. I think most of us will agree that a moral system in which the end justifies the means is kind of the hallmark of not moral. Many disgusting things have been done using that framework. I'm not going to list them because that well has been poisoned by Christians in power. Ultimately, my beef with this claim is it's not demonstrably true, and it does more harm than good. It does real, demonstrable human harm in our society. People are hurt by this. It's not something we should ignore. It's not something that should get us turned off of being political, which has become another swear word used by the right. Have you ever noticed that right-wingers really hate people who make things political? So let's define another word, political. So political is how we discuss what we as a society should do and how we should do it. It's a kind of collective morality that people living in a society do. Any society that is trying to work collectively to figure out what to do is doing politics. And when people say, let's not make this political, what I hear is, hey, just turn off your brain and do what my God tells you to do. Don't think about it. Don't reason about it. This isn't grounds for discussion. Just do what my God says. My God is always right. I am always right. You should just agree that I'm right. It's paternalistic nonsense. If you're watching this channel and subscribe to it, you probably don't like the direction it's taking us in. Is it moral to lock families in concentration camps? Is it moral to deport children with cancer to other countries so they don't have access to their meds? Is it moral to take social welfare apart because you don't like everyone that's getting welfare and screw everybody else who needs it? I think we're at an inflection point in history. We've got to decide which way that little line is going to go on the graph after this. Are we going to head towards increasing social progress and creating a society in which more people are able to succeed as who they are? Or do you want to go down the road of enforced conformity, which seems to be the language of the Trump administration, of Elon Musk and the tech billionaires, of the Republicans in Congress, of the prosperity gospel preachers, and all of this zoo of absolute bastards who currently are the loudest minority in the building and somehow have gotten their filthy, filthy mitts on the levers of power. I've been the out-of-body atheist, and I hope you go enjoy your subjective morality responsibly. But before you go, like and subscribe. Now piss off.